Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the middle of a high-stakes global battle for digital independence, and you'll see India is right at the center of this storm.
This one line from our source material, it just says it all, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this massive shift in global power. We're talking about a world where technology, data, and those tiny chips that power everything, well, that's the new territory to be won. It's a world where digital resources definitely are not borderless anymore.
So, what does it even mean for a country to be in charge of its own digital future? Well, it all boils down to this one core concept: AI sovereignty. Think of it as a nation's power to make its own rules for its own data, to build its own tech infrastructure, and really to guide its own AI revolution.
Okay, so how is this new world order actually taking shape? Well, there's a new kind of barrier rising across the globe, and people are starting to call it the Silicon Curtain. And let's be clear, this isn't about old-school ideology. This is all about technology.
This right here shows the new global power dynamic perfectly. On one side, you have the nations that design and actually build the advanced chips that power our world. And on the other side, well, you've got pretty much everyone else, the nations that are completely dependent on that supply.
So where does India fit into all this? It finds itself right at the heart of this geopolitical drama, and it's facing a series of really critical tests. We're talking about 5 major shocks that are going to determine whether it can achieve true digital self-reliance. Let's break down the first one, the battle for data.
Okay, so the first battleground isn't physical at all. It's completely digital. We're talking about data, the absolute lifeblood of artificial intelligence. And for India, this front involves 2 really distinct shocks: making sure data stays in the country and establishing true control over it.
And right here, you can see how India is starting to leverage its massive market. You have these global AI giants like Anthropic setting up shop in hubs like Bengaluru. And yeah, they're coming for the talent, but they also have to comply with India's strict laws about keeping Indian data in India. This is creating a whole new ecosystem for something called sovereign-aware AI, where, get this, following the local rules actually becomes a competitive advantage.
India's approach to this didn't just happen overnight. It started with some pretty basic regulations. Then it evolved into a real strategy to use those laws for a national benefit. And now it looks like it's entering a third phase, using its control over data to establish itself as a leader for the entire region.
But here's the thing. Controlling all the data in the world is pretty meaningless if you don't have the hardware to process it. And that brings us to the final 3 shocks, which all center on the global war for chips. Just look at this number. It's absolutely staggering. Almost 90% of the world's most advanced semiconductor chips are made in one place, Taiwan. That is a single point of failure for the entire planet's digital infrastructure. I mean, think about it. This incredible concentration of manufacturing creates a massive, massive vulnerability. Any geopolitical instability, any disruption at all in Taiwan could trigger what the source material calls a global AI polycrisis. It could cripple AI development for nations like India that depend almost entirely on these imports.
So what does this mean for India? Well, it faces a triple threat. First, you've got American policies that are basically weaponizing chip access, putting U.S. firms at the front of the line. Second, there's that constant geopolitical risk hanging over Taiwan. And third, its own supply chains are still super fragile and completely dependent on imported hardware.
So to counter all these threats, India is now treating chip manufacturing not just as some industrial policy, but as a core pillar of its national security. Its semiconductor mission, these partnerships with giants like Micron and TSMC, it's all about building resilience and securing its own independence when it comes to compute power.
So when you put all these threads together, data governance, hardware controls, supply chain fragility, it all leads to a really critical crossroads for India. Is it going to become a digital power or just a pawn in a game played by others?
And the source material is really clear on this point. Having great policies on paper just isn't enough. The real challenge, the hard part, is to translate that vision into reality. It means actually building the factories, enforcing the data laws, and creating the sovereign cloud infrastructure you need to stand on your own 2 feet.
This table, I think, lays out India's strategic playbook beautifully. For each of those 5 key shocks we talked about, it identifies a global trend and the specific leverage India has. So by using its market demand to enforce data residency, or by diversifying its hardware sources, it can actually turn these crises into real opportunities. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. Look, the global tech order is fracturing. It's creating new risks, for sure, but also new openings for leadership. If India can secure its chips, protect its data, and build its own compute infrastructure, it won't just survive the Silicon Curtain. It might just be the nation that gets to redraw it.